Hello, fellow investors. Welcome to another episode of Ritter on Real Estate. I'm your host, Kent Ritter, and today our guest is Chris Prefontaine. Chris is a three-time best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms, The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, and then Monica Sawyer's Real Estate Investing for Women. He's the founder and CEO of smartrealestatecoach.com, and he's host of the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. Chris, thanks so much for being here today.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, Kent. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I'm excited to dig in today. Before we do that, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I'll take 30 and a half years and do it in like a minute or two here.
Perfect.
So we, my son-in-law, my son and I, and a great team buy and sell property around the New England area, specifically Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts. We then teach the exact same concepts, which you and I will dive into a little bit, all across the country with students. We call them associates. So we actually do deals with them so that they learn very interactively. And that was all, this whole niche that we're in right now, Kent, was built coming out of the '08 crash. Yes, I've been at this 30 and a half years, but 18 of those led into the crash, right? There, give or take. And so learned some really tough lessons there. And as a result, re-engineered the entire business to what it is today. And you couldn't have convinced me in '08, but super thankful that that went. So the curveball that got thrown at us was, in hindsight, very good. And so we're set up quite differently now. I'm sure we'll dive into it.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to dig in. I think it's really interesting. I think how you've taken obviously some lumps, and we'll get into what those were, but come out, even better than before, and kind of realign into a bigger, kind of better, I imagine what is a stronger business. And so, yeah, excited to dig in and understand a little more. So you guys are you're buying properties, you've got a coaching business, you're teaching people how to buy properties. But what makes your program unique, and maybe elaborate a little more on kind of what happened in '08 and how did that, how are you doing things before, what happened, and then how does that alter how you do things now?
Yeah, no particular priority order, but the short answer is I was buying property there pretty conventionally prior to '08. I was a realtor for like 13 years. And then I started doing my own investments and coaching some people selectively, but I would raise money from investors and then buy property, commercial mostly during going into the crash, multifamily and commercial. And then I would also buy by taking bank loans out. I had good credit then. I thought that was the norm. That's how I grew up. And then the crash happened, and some of my projects, like we had one in particular, we had a condominium conversion project that went down 2/3 in value. I mean, that's rather dramatic. So because I was on personally, the banks came knocking, and that's what they did on 22 of my properties. They were big projects. So coming out of that, the biggest lesson was that I do not, unless it's for personal residence only, is the only time I tell people it's okay, sign on bank debt. Just don't do it. So we buy everything owner financing or subject to existing financing or lease purchase. But the first two I like better because we own it. The last one we control it. That's how we buy. We do. At any one time, we control about 80 million in real estate, and we are not on any loans. So I sleep a little better at night than I did going into the crash. Let me put it that way.
Interesting. And when you say you're not on loans, that means you don't use loans, or you're not signing recourse loans you're not personally guaranteeing loans.
Good question. We don't take out loans. So like, let me take my office building. I'm not in it today. I'm remote, but my office building was bought in 2018. It was bought from a savvy real estate investor. He's like the largest landowner on the island where I live, this 3-town island. And he literally wanted owner financing. He was free and clear, debt free. That's who we like to deal with, by the way. It's about a third of the properties in the United States. And I usually like to structure principal only payments. He's conventional, so he wanted interest. So we did a hybrid deal. I did about 24 months of principal only pay down, hammered the principal. And then we amortized the balance and we kept going. That whole deal, as you know, commercial underwriting can be grueling. That whole deal took literally minutes in his office. And then we happened to have a mutual law office and they drafted the deal up. So I just don't go to banks anymore. And people say to me, well, you could have got a little better rate. I said, I don't care. I don't want the tie personally. I don't want the mental grueling part of the going through underwriting. So we just don't do loans, period. And that happened to be an office building, but you can do this on anything. You can do it on planes and boats, right? But we're talking real estate only.
So you're not using bank financing, but you are using owner financing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there is leverage. There's a piece of leverage in your deal. It's just kind of where the source is coming from, right? And
100%.
more
Yeah. And then of
comfortable
course
with
we
the owner.
don't sign personally on the owner financing, but yes, there's debt there.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So, no, I think it's really interesting. It's definitely a different model. So you've explained how you've kind of altered the debt and how that changed your business model. What maybe explain for our listeners, because some probably don't know. Yeah, you mentioned three types. You mentioned owner financing, you mentioned lease purchase option, you mentioned another one I can't remember off the top of my head. Why don't you explain what those are and kind of what, you know, just explain what those are and how those work.
Sure. And then you can have me peel back further on any one of them. I'll just give a high level.
Sure.
So the owner financing one that I just explained is simply, we do target a niche within the niche, which is those free and clear properties. So that owner, Alan is his name, he became the bank essentially. So instead of bringing new financing to the table, your settlement statement just says owner financing, and that's the mortgage that he holds, and we pay him directly. Sadly, he since passed away, but his family now receives those payments. So owner financing, most people, like sellers even, are familiar with it. The one you said, you couldn't remember what I said, was subject to existing financing. Again, been around for hundreds of years, but a lot of people aren't familiar with it. So that's where I'll buy someone's home. Unlike the office building owner that was debt free, usually a subject to existing financing seller is stressed out. And that's why they're willing to transfer the property to you, leaving the loan in their name. So I make payments on their behalf. I own the property. The loan is never in my name. And until such time that's cashed out, they're still technically obligated to the loan. So there's got to be a trust factor there. And I got to make the payment, so I don't have any due on sale clause triggered. So that's subject to existing financing. And again, from a seller avatar standpoint, one is not stressed out at all, very savvy and wants to do a long-term deal for estate planning or tax reasons. And one is usually stressed going, look, I need debt relief, take my property. The third is lease purchase. In all states but Texas, as of right now, you can do what's called a sandwich lease, where I go in and tie up doesn't matter what type of property, I tie up a property on a lease purchase contract with the right to go ahead and put in a buyer of mine, a tenant buyer, who may need time to get financing. They just can't get financing today. And so the sandwich comes in where I control the property from the seller. I then locate my buyer and I put them together. I'm in the middle of that sandwich, and I secure my interest with a notice of option. So I'm on title. And so there's no licensing or anything like that that comes into play, because I'm an equitable interest in the property.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So seller financing, subject to, and then a lease purchase option. On that lease purchase option, are you, are you essentially, is it type of wholesaling that property?
Good question. We don't. There's people teach that. We actually, all of ours are going to exit on the leases. We're going to exit with a rent to own buyer in there. I've done on a little 2-unit commercial building, but I've done it hundreds of times, if not approaching 1,000 on residential. And so there'll be a buyer. There's about 80% of the market right now, as rates are starting to skyrocket, as you know. There's buyers that are valid buyers that might have got stung by COVID or stung by a divorce, or the credit needs adjusting, or because of the COVID craze of everybody going the entrepreneur route, they might need 2 years of seasoning before they're financeable, with a new business. So those are the buyers we like to work with. They have down payments, they just need time. So we put them in the home, and then eventually we get them mortgage ready, and they cash everybody out of the deal. So it's pretty cool, because every one of our deals, we've trademarked what we call the 3 payday system. So coming from 30 years of real estate, for 18 of those, I got paid once. I got paid well, but I got paid once per deal. If I did a flip or if I did a rehab, now we get paid 3 times on every single deal. So we've trademarked that in the United States anyway, for 3 paydays. Pretty cool.
Gotcha. Well, I want to dig into more to what the 3 paydays are, but before you do that, just to round off the financing, I think for people that are listening, I think this is a really timely discussion. Obviously, if you've been paying any attention, you've seen where interest rates are going. They're going up. They're going up for the foreseeable future, at least over the next 18 months. And so I think this discussion around alternative financing sources that Chris has just laid out, the 3 different types, right? I think you guys should be paying attention to as listeners, because if you're looking at traditional financing with a bank and for whatever reason, it's just not getting you where you need to be, know that there's other options out there. Know that these are other options that you can present to sellers. And maybe it's a way to get a deal done or keep a deal alive when where you just can't let that bank, if that's your only avenue, be that barrier. So I think it's optionality, which is important. I think as interest rates go up, I think creative financing becomes even more important. It hasn't been, in the past few years, our interest rates have been crazy low. It's been fairly easy to go to a bank. It's going to be more difficult. So I think just once you guys pay attention, do some research on those and just have options as you're trying to do deals.
Yeah, for sure. And there's another piece of the sub twos, Ken, I'll throw out. My wife asked me this morning. She said she understands sub two. Obviously, we've been married 36 years. She kind of gets what I do. So she said, isn't it cool that the rates are so low, were so low just not too long ago. So some of these sub two properties, sadly, the people or the owners can't hang on to it, even though they've had some good appreciation and a good rate. And so we're getting these properties with underlying loans like that are carrying those 3 and 4% interest rates. I'm talking about commercial, multi, and resident, regular single families. You can hang on to those for 10, 20, 30 years. You don't have to exit out of them. So we do a ton of that. It's really cool coming up with all these changes going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting in at a preferred rate. That's creating value right away. Well, very good. So yeah, let's talk about this 3 payday a little bit. What's that about? What are the 3 paydays?
Yeah, so this applies to only residential now. So let me just do that disclosure. So the 3 paydays would be, remember that buyer that is a valid buyer, but they need time. They just left corporate America. They make 6 figures. They have a 401k, and now they go in their own business, but they're not financeable, and they want to buy a house for their family. So payday 1 is they put down a down payment. We're usually in about the 7.5% range if it's a jumbo loan, or will be eventually for them. Over the course of their rent own, we want to get them up to 20% so we can set them up to win. So that's nice because it's non-refundable, and it gets them more vested in the home. It gives you immediate cash flow. That's yours. Payday 2 is the difference between whatever I'm collecting from my tenant buyer while they're in the home getting mortgage ready and what I'm paying out to my seller or their underlying debt that I'm paying on. There's a spread there. It's usually like about $300 up to $1,000 is a typical deal per month per house. And payday 3 is the best. Payday 3 is all of that time where the tenant buyer is in the home. Could be 3 years is pretty typical, but could be longer. All that principal pay downs accruing to us, and then any markup in price we did. So all 3 paydays, to put some real math to this, for our family team is around 75 grand per deal. Around the country, I'm talking east to west coast, we go a low 45,000 with our students to a high of $250,000, in the California area, DC, hotter markets and a higher price range. But that's pretty lucrative. So people think of these deals we do, they're so lucrative. A lot of people do them part-time, because how many of those do you really need? 6-figure deals do you really need or want in the course of a year for cash flow? I don't want to water it down, because it is work, obviously, the stumbling blocks, but it's not brain science how we structure these.
Now it's interesting on that last one. So what position is in the sandwich deal? Like, what's the relationship to the seller in that deal?
So we have the relationship with the seller directly. They're not responsible for the buyer that I install in the home, nor do they have any risk if my buyer, 2% of these default, which is not bad. You look at the government loans, it's probably higher than, I don't know the number, but even if a buyer of ours defaults, they have a life event. We had 2 during COVID out of like 50 something. That's not too bad. But if that happens, that's our problem. That's not the seller's problem. All they know is they're guaranteed X amount of equity at the end, if they had equity, or they're just guaranteed their loan gets paid off. And it's our headache if anything happens in the middle.
But with the seller, is it seller financing then?
On the sandwich, no, what happens is, let's use an example. There's a lot of scenarios, but let's say that you have a property that, I'm so sorry, I get noise in the background remotely. Let's say you have a property that has $300,000 net retail value. We agree on that, Ken, you and I. There's an underlying debt of $250,000. I'm paying on that underlying debt that's in your name every single month. You're waiting for your 50 grand equity that you thought you had or you tried to get on the open market. That's how that works. So I'm not doing any owner financing. He or she is just going to get their equity at the end and get their loan paid off.
You're paying on their loan during
Correct.
the time.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So it's very similar to a sub 2. I just don't no deed transfers. That's the big difference.
Right. Okay. So it's a sub 2 plus just kind of another piece of it where you're bringing another a buyer to the table.
Yeah.
that you're going to build up. Gotcha. Interesting. Well, very good. So, obviously, it's unique. It definitely sounds like it could be lucrative with your 3 paydays. Um, I mean, what do you see? How do you see things changing over, just in the current environment that we're in? Obviously, a lot of things moving around. I mean, is that good for business, bad for business? How do you adjust strategy? Do you need to? And tell me what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, it's actually great. Anytime the market shifts or there's chaos or uncertainty, like when COVID initially hit, for example, that's good for us because what do? We solve problems, right? Or in the free and clear case, we help people achieve a goal that they otherwise couldn't. So when there's change, that's good. And the market's always changing. So I built this niche coming out of the crash to really weather any storm. So what do I see happening? Well, we just talked about interest rates, you and I, right?
Mhm.
There's tens of thousands or probably millions, if you look at the whole market, of buyers that are getting pushed to the side. They might have been on the cusp of qualifying and now they're getting pushed to the side, especially when you're talking commercial deals that have taken 25 or 30% down, or multifamily deals. So they're getting pushed out of the market. We have a pathway to get them back into home ownership. They just need time. So there's going to be a plethora of buyers for us there. And then on the selling side, that automatically brings the demand down. I think everybody would agree with that, as buyers get pushed off the conventional, trail of mortgage underwriting. So
Mhm.
I think that's cool. The other thing that's happening is we're like a microcosm of society, our community. We call it the Wicked Smart community because we see what's going on across the country. And what's going on now is we're getting calls like left and right from people that kick the can down the road, so to speak, with forbearance agreements. And some of them just can't handle them. They can't make do where they're supposed to. And they're calling us to take them over. And we're picking up a lot of subject to properties that way. And it's saving them and saving their credit. So we're doing a good thing. It's a healthy relationship. And we're getting those lower interest loans and this enormous 3 paydays and built into all of those. So I think we sort of got a perfect storm here as this market tends to shift and feed us these types of deals. I love it, frankly. And my wife says, that's crazy. Everybody's whining about it. I said, no, it's really good for the terms niche that we can grab these deals and help so many people.
Interesting. Yeah, and you mentioned that buying on terms. What do you mean by buying on terms?
That's just so people would know that Ken has creative real estate. It's just what you and I have been lease purchase,
Okay.
owner financing, and sub two. Yeah, my book was just called real estate on your terms, and so we stuck with that theme.
I got you. I got you. So it's
Yeah,
got creative financing
yeah,
options, creative
yeah.
ways to get it done. Gotcha. And how do you guys source your properties? I mean, how are you getting all these deals?
Okay, so when someone's brand new, and then I'll go deeper into what we do as a family because I've been at it
Yeah.
so long. So when someone's brand new, it's not much different than other lead sources in that we call for sale by owners, not great during the hot market, right? So then we call for rent by owners. There are a lot of tired landlords, especially like in your multifamily space, a lot of tired landlords.
Hmm.
So it's a great source, a great list. And then expired listings. I don't care how hot the market is, like California, New York, some of these hot markets, they're expired listings still for whatever reason. So we fish in that pond. When a student, and in our case, we're always looking for a bigger lead, so more leads, more volume. We do specifically buy 2 lists, and they've always been in any market very, very successful for us. The free and clear list that I mentioned, a third of the properties in the United States. Mortgage broker in Florida told me last week in her area in Naples, 52% are debt free. 52% of the homes. That's a cool market to fish in. And I'm sure the multis are the same way. I don't know the percentages, so I won't try to guess at it. That's a good one. And then absentee slash out of state owners. Great post COVID seems to me because we're getting a lot of that because I think what I'm hearing and seeing is people are unloading properties where they were traveling before. So,
Hmm.
and I live in an area like that. So I understand a lot of people are selling. If they're not VRBOing, they're selling.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And so if somebody's free and clear, you're able to basically create an income stream for them through the
Yeah.
property.
Yeah. They have some tax advantages. Like this guy that sold me the building, he forgot to put a prepay in. I didn't expect him to, but later on, when I even talked about possibly refining conventionally, he forbid us. Like he was adamant, he was angry about it. So I never did, but he did not want to get paid out. He had estate planning in mind. He was ill. And,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
when I said passed away. And he also
Yeah.
had tax advantages in mind. He didn't want his son and his wife to be running a building He just wanted it covered and an income stream coming in. And that's why he
Yeah.
did it that way.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think, like you said, you're able to solve problems. I mean, you're
Yeah.
able to basically fit the right solution to different folks. My other question, I was just curious about it. Why don't the subject to people? Why don't they just sell their house?
Yeah, best way is to give you a couple examples. Like just recently, COVID example, we had a woman, older woman in Michigan with one of my students, and we do the deals with them. So I like just did this deal. She
Mhm.
was sadly behind on her first. It was only like an $800 payment, and her second was like 200. She was behind 3 or 4 months already on these and just couldn't make it up. And so the market with what she had it stacked up with arrears and the forbearance and everything added in, she couldn't get
Mhm.
it sold conventionally quick enough to band-aid her problem. And so when she found out from my student, not only could we do it quickly, real quickly, but she also found out who we serve on the other end, i.e. the buyers that need time. And that lit her up. We get that a lot from sellers. They like our energy of who we're trying to help on both sides of the transaction
Mhm.
versus, hey, I want to grab your deal at 60 cents on the dollar. And a lot of sellers comment on that because I'll get them their price or I'll get them out of their problem as long as we get the right term. And
Yeah.
so there's all different reasons. Sometimes they just don't want to pay a fee. They're just stubborn. Sometimes they want more than the market will give. If there's an owner financing deal, Kent, and I could pay a premium on it as long as I'm paying principal only and as long as I get a long enough term, because I'm eating that premium up real quick, like 4, 5, 6 months, right?
Yeah.
It's principal
Yeah.
pay down. So I
Yeah.
say, well, no, I don't want to sell your property. I'll pay you more. I bought a 6 unit, for example, recently. He was a retired professor, and he had girls that his daughters just got out of school, and he didn't need the cash anymore. So he said, I think it was like 449. The market realistically, from an income standpoint, if I did it on income method, it's probably like a 410 building. I gladly paid him his price because he gave me like 6 year terms, principal only. Place was a machine for cash.
Yeah.
So again, there's some reasons. There's so many reasons, but
So how does principal only work?
there are only a few exceptions per the IRS, and you can Google it, where you have to charge imputed interest. You have to have imputed interest. So
Mhm.
on the residentials, I don't have to pay interest. So the guy for my building, for example, for the first 24 months, every payment I made was principal only, just
So you're
hammering
getting an
down.
interest-free loan
Yeah,
for a certain term.
yeah, usually 4
Crazy,
years. This guy
crazy to
wouldn't go
me,
for it.
but
No, no, no. But we did a hybrid. We were both happy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, hey, if you can get it, that's great. I had not heard of
Any
that
bit of it,
before,
right?
but that is a sweet deal. I'll give you that. So I think I understand now kind of what you're doing. I think it's definitely a compelling angle. It sounds like you guys have scaled up to a pretty uh, robust state. You guys are doing it across the country. And now you're teaching other people how to do it, right? So what does that program look like as your I guess as you're partnering with people
Yeah.
to get these deals done? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I'm big on free because I think there's so many shiny objects in real estate. So I tend to throw people through like the YouTube channel where they can see the deals. We're pretty blunt. We just kind of throw good, bad, and ugly out there so people understand what they're getting into. So we
Hmm.
tend to attract a more serious person that goes, hey, I saw it, get it, understand it, want to get behind it. But then if they decide that that's something they want to do, then we put them into our academy. Our academy's online. It's constantly updated, even post-COVID, like, interest rates rising, everything's updated. It's a living, breathing course, not just a once through. And then they can either go do deals on their own. And frankly, I think money will be left on the table, but they'll get it done. Or they can apply, it's by application. They can apply to be in our associate program. And our associate program, there's different levels, but it just means how much they're going to keep versus how much they're going to split with us. And it's not for life. It's like 10 deals because 10 deals, they're not like the expert, but they got their feet wet enough to know, hey, I kind of get what I'm doing. I can fly on my own, or let's do more deals together. We get a little of both. Very, very family oriented just because we have a family business and we tend to attract that. People with family members or kids that want to be in the business or a goal to do that. So it's a very tight community. And gosh, you got at this point about 140 people like on a Slack community where you get a deal and you throw it out there and you got everybody helping you, not just our family anymore. So it's a pretty cool environment where it's interactive learning nonstop, 24/7.
Yeah, and what's the biggest barrier to getting started with this type of program? Is it finding the leads? What's the piece of it?
It's probably gonna surprise you, but I think that any niche, not just ours, is there's too many marketing things going online and on TV where real estate is portrayed as a get rich quick, right? So I honestly think the biggest barrier is expectations. People come in with this expectation that they can do a deal tomorrow and it's easy. I screen that it's not, so they don't come in with false expectations. I think it's the biggest problem, the biggest challenge in the real estate industry right now, and has been probably for decades. Number one. Number two, belief in themselves. I know this is like, you probably thought I was going to give you a real estate answer, but the mental game,
yeah, it makes sense.
Much more than people think. And I'm sure in your business and syndication must be even tougher for some people in their mind. But they all can do it if they would just get around, like in syndication, get around you, figure out how to do it, get around people that have done it. This is not brain science. I was reading, it was, what's his name? Anderson Cooper. He wrote a book about his family, the Vanderbilts. And I only picked it up because where I'm from in Newport, Rhode Island, there's a mansion there that obviously has history. So I picked it up and it said in the 1600s, before banking in New York City, they were doing lease purchase, owner financing. This is not new. It's just that we're making it as mainstream as we can and disrupting the market, to your earlier point, as banks get tougher. But it's been around forever, and it's just, can you do it? Yes. Can you do it in your market? Yes. Can you do it in your price range? Yes. Just get around someone that can show you how. That's all.
No, I don't doubt that mindset. I mean, I think everything starts with mindset. I think you can only achieve what you believe, right? You got to believe you can do it. And I think getting around people that are like-minded is incredibly important, whether that's going to meetups, whether it's, I mean, even it's just, I mean, for me, it started listening to podcasts and just hearing from people like this. They're like, wow, this stuff is possible and people are out there doing it. I mean, that was kind of the first step. But, then like from my own personal path, that led to going to meetups and finding groups of people that were like-minded and then, mentors and coaching and things. And because when you're doing stuff, it's different. You got to find people that you got to get validation from somewhere. Cause I bet most of you, I mean, you've been doing it for 30 years. So I bet when you started, maybe a lot of your family members probably weren't like, yeah, Chris, you should definitely go out and do all these weird things that we've never heard of in real estate. Right. I mean, most people probably told you were a little bit crazy to be doing that.
I can tell you, I laughed because my wife just brought this up recently. She said, do you remember in 13 when I had 4 years of nightmare, literally nightmare, stress, health, everything from 8 to 12, working my way out of that nonsense with the crash. And she said, in 13, you started going after the terms business, the creative real estate. And so many people said, what are you thinking about? You're not, because the market was still weird then, it was low. And people were saying, what are you doing? You're buying, like I was gobbling them up then on terms. And people thought I was cuckoo. And to this day, we close 2 or 3 properties a month that I gobbled up in 13 or 14, or, it keeps just rolling forward now for the infinite future. So you're good. I don't care what niche you're going. Someone's going to tell you you're nuts. Go seek someone else. That's all.
That's right. You got to get around like-minded people. I think that's important for folks in real estate. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you sharing your model. I think it's unique. It's definitely compelling. I think it sounds like a good way to get started. I mean, it sounds like, it's something that is definitely like achievable and pretty approachable. And that's great. And you got a program around it. Sounds like you also got a good YouTube channel and things. So we'll make sure that we get those listed. Awesome. But before I let you get going, I want to take you through our keys to success round. I got some questions I want to ask you, 4 questions I ask everybody.
Sure.
The first one is, if you were going to invest your money with somebody else in their real estate deal, and you could only ask them one question, what would that one question be?
How and at what level am I secured?
What do you mean by that? Secured?
Like when I put my head on the pillow at night, am I going to lose my money?
Gotcha.
So
how you protect
the return after that? I just want to know, how is it protected?
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. I mean, I say this a lot on the show, but I think newer investors focus on that shiny upside. They focus on that number. I think savvy investors focus on what's my downside protection first. Yep. So I appreciate you saying that. What are you most proud of in your career?
I'd have to say, with the benefit of hindsight now, my family with me in the business, my kids, quote unquote, my adult kids are 30. My son-in-law's 32 or 31. My son's 33 and my daughter's 32, and they're with me in the business. And I get to hang out with them every day. Like that, I don't know what else I'd want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old
right
now. And that's my hope is, one day, maybe in maybe 15 years, we get them into the business and we
Get them
turn
in the
into
deals now.
turn into a
They'll
family
never
deal.
forget.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. What's a book that everybody should read?
We just had an offsite last week, our company did, and we started talking about Shoe Dog again, Phil Knight's book.
Yeah.
It's like our CFO chimed in and said it's my favorite book. I said, like I brought it up originally, like it's an amazing book if you're building a business. It's an amazing book anyway, but it's an amazing book if you are building or want to build a business.
Yeah, I love that. Love that book. And lastly, what is your number one key to success?
This is a toughie to go to one answer, but I would say that always looking for the next person or group that can bring you to the next level. What I mean by that is every 6 months, sometimes 12, there's somewhere we're trying to go. And so we literally as a team go, okay, personally and business wise, what do we have to do? Who do we have to hire to get us there? Like every year we do this. And personally, I've always done it because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Anything. I'm talking, open a hot dog stand. Someone did it. Do syndication. Someone did it. Go find them. That's it. Don't reinvent.
So find them and then figure out a way to partner with them. Is that
partner or learn from in some shape, form? Yeah, mentor. I don't care what the arrangement is. Somehow rub elbows with the right people.
Yeah, yeah. I love that advice. I think it's critical. I mean, I think in real estate, well, I guess everything, but especially in real estate, it seems like everything that we do. I mean, it seems like all my success has been related to the network I built and the relationships I have, and getting around the right people. And
for sure,
it's like what I tell people when they come out to my meetup that we do monthly. I just tell them, you spent the time to come here. You might as well meet the people that are here because you never know, you're gonna meet one person that's gonna change your life.
Literally, could be worth millions, and it has happened. You just got to get around it and follow the energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that advice. So Chris, if people want to learn more about what you're doing, they want to learn about the program, how to be wicked smart, how do they reach you?
Yeah, good plug in there, Ken. Well, besides the YouTube, we did create a link private for your tribe. They can get the best-selling book, and we throw some other goodies in there. And it's not one of those, hey, free book, but you got to put in $6 for your credit card for shipping. I mean, shipping, everything, we pay it. Just go to wickedsmartbooks.com/Ritter. And all you do is put your name and address. There's no card, there's no hidden meaning. You'll get a nice gist for what we got going on. And if you want to learn more, just go on our website and you can get a call with me, smartrealestatecoach.com. Again, I'm into free so that you can do your own due diligence. And if you decide you want to look into our niche, great. I'd love to chat. If not, it's okay.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you doing that for the listeners, Chris. And we'll make sure we share all that below. So guys, click on that, get the book. I mean, at least check it out. And with that, Chris, thank you so much for coming on, adding value to the listeners, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
You bet. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. You too.